Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
One night in Bangkok makes a hard man humble. Not much between despair and ecstasy. One night in Bangkok and a tough guy tumble. Can't be too careful with your company. I can feel the devil walking next to me.
It's Nerdery Murdery the Musical, Part 2.
Part deuce.
Welcome to episode 178 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 178. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. As I said, we're sitting here on episode 178. So those of you who enjoyed 176 had to wait a week to get your part 2. We have our guests back in the house, Brenda Shanks and Megan Shanks. Shanks, excuse me. I didn't want to mispronounce that. So we'll be stepping into her and Zig's list this week, as Brenda and my list came first, just truly random pull out of the hat. I do have to say I'm tired of getting old. I had cataract surgery last week, and so I have to go off camera from time to time because I don't. I have to put drops in my eyes, and from when we're recording right now, I've got 54 minutes to my next set of drops.
Nice.
But
They make your eyes bluer.
I was on a leadership meeting at work the other day, and I wasn't even realizing I was on camera. And it was like time to do my drops, and so I started doing them, and my boss went, That's kind of gross. So, so yeah, I get my right eye done in just a little over a week. So it's a disturbing surgery. You are awake the whole time,
Yeah, I
and
couldn't.
I need you to stare into this laser for me, please, sir.
well, so I wanted to get the IOL, the intraoperative lens, whatever it is, the IOL lens. They're the top of the line lens, but my eyes wouldn't dilate enough to get that. You have to be a minimum of 6 millimeters, preferably seven, and mine would only get to 4 to 5. So I had to take a step down in lenses. And the doctor's telling me this and says I have to make some decisions. Well, I'm doped up on Vicodin at that point and not in a place to be making decisions. And I grabbed my phone and I texted Chelsea because I sent her home. I was going to be there for like 3 hours. And I said, you got to come back here. I can't make all these decisions. Um, and, talking to the doctor and everything, and she goes, yeah, so, we're going to have to do this, this, and this. And I go, oh God, I really don't want to have to start this work all over again. I guess if you want to go ahead and start it, we'll do it. And she goes, oh, we've already started. We took care of your astigmatism the first time. Now we got to put the lens in. So you actually do two different procedures when they do it. The first one was a laser when they took care of the astigmatism on my eyes, and then they had to put the lens in. But it's disturbing. They put you on an IV to comfort you or ease your anxiety, and it did nothing to ease my anxiety. Just staring up into these lights, I'm like, all I'm seeing are these three white lights. And they said, you're good, that's fine, you're fine, but that's all I'm seeing. We know you're fine, you're fine. So when I go off camera here in just a little while, it's so I can put my drops in, which I think will still be in musicals during that point. So
Nice.
all right, Zig, I'll let you go ahead and kick it off with the nerdery side of the house.
We're going to start with Megan's list here.
All right.
We want to start with Sweeney Todd. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, also known as Sweeney Todd, is a 1979 musical with music and lyrics by Stephen Sondheim, who we did an episode on, and book by Hugh Wheeler. It is based on the 1970 play Sweeney Todd by Christopher Bond. The character of Sweeney Todd first appeared in a Victorian penny dreadful titled The String of Pearls. Sweeney Todd opened on Broadway in 1979 and in the West End in 1980. It won the Tony Award for Best Musical and the Olivier Award for Best New Musical. It has been reviewed in many productions and inspired a film adaptation. The original logo for the musical is a modified version of an advertising image from the 19th century, with the sign replaced by a straight razor. There is also a woman wearing a blood-stained dress and holding a rolling pin next to the man. The character Sweeney Todd originated as a serialized Victorian popular fiction known as Penny Dreadfuls. A story called The Swing of Pearls was published in a weekly magazine during the winter of 1846 to 1847. Set in 1785, the story features as its principal villain a certain Sweeney Todd and includes all the plot elements used in later versions. The musical, based on Christopher Bond's 1970 play Sweeney Todd, which introduces a psychological backstory and motivation to Todd's crimes. In Bond's reincarnation of the character, Todd was the victim of a ruthless judge who exiled him to Australia and raped his young wife, driving her mad. Stephen Sondheim first conceived of the musical version of the story in 1973 after he saw Bond's take on the story at the Theatre Royal Stratford East. Bond's sophisticated plot and language significantly elevated the lurid nature of the tale. Sondheim once observed it had a weight to it because Bond wrote certain characters in blank verse. He also infused it into the plot elements from a Jacobean tragedy, The Count of Monte Cristo. And what Sondheim said was, what I did to Chris's play is more than enhance it. I had a feeling it would be a new animal. The effect it had at Stratford East in London and the effect it had at the Uris Theatre in New York are two entirely different effects, even though it's the same play. It was essentially the charming over there because they didn't take Sweeney Todd seriously. Our production was larger in scope. Hal Prince gave it an epic sense, a sense that it was a man of some size instead of just a nutcase. The music helped to give it that dimension. Now, having said that, there are two different versions of Sweeney Todd. Megan, you talked about something called something Junior.
Oh no, that was Wonka.
Yeah, I know, but there are two different ways to do Sweeney Todd. You have Sweeney Todd and you have Teeny Todd.
Oh,
The
wow.
difference is in Sweeney Todd, when he cuts their throats, it sprays the front 2 rows of the audience.
Oh.
Huh. I didn't know
Yes,
that.
it does.
I love that.
And if you see it, don't wear anything nice.
It's like a guac.
Thing is, when you see the advertisement for Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, you don't know what version you're getting.
So wear old clothes no matter what.
Yes. Yes.
Well,
especially if you're sitting in the first couple of rows.
And I'm curious because I have not seen the movie version. Is the Johnny Depp one any good?
Yes.
It's all right. It's missing some of the songs. And Stephen Sondheim's pacing, you know how his thing is, he'll put a bunch of words together, but he takes a weird break. Like, it's not Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. It is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. There's a beat between the two, which makes it, for some reason, more interesting. Dude got dialed into the human condition in a way that I think other people just didn't. Sondheim's a genius.
So I think that's the movie one is the only one I've ever seen. So yeah,
I have seen both. I have seen Sweeney Todd performed because I've seen both at the Muni, and I've seen one of our colleges did it.
They probably did a T. Todd version where the blood was
I guess
much
so,
less.
because I remember. I guess
remember it.
the Muni did that too, because I don't think.
Well, you weren't that.
But
close.
I also wasn't that close. To I didn't have my art weren't.
Yeah, the live version's the only one I've ever seen. I never saw the Depp version. It just didn't hold my interest, and I never saw it. But the live performance, it's very good. It's very, very good. It's disturbing, but it's very, very good.
See, what I said about in the last one, my grievances with your playlist is that my list entirely consists of the movie versions. Even though I have seen, I've seen, and I do love the stage production of Sweeney Todd. But
what are you talking about?
My heart belongs to
Johnny Depp.
She's talking about your clips.
You didn't like the stage production clips.
Yeah, she's talking about your
clips. That guy's the one that won the Tony for it.
Any of the movie ones of my musicals.
Okay, all right. Well, hold on.
Well, don't have to change it right now in the middle of production. Let's move on with the show.
Okay.
You got time.
Say about this one.
Go ahead.
So, Sweeney Todd is my one that is my top no matter what. Because when you asked for the list, I said in no particular order except for Sweeney Todd, because that will always be my number one, and which is technically why I don't include Willy Wonka, because that's my favorite movie. Willy Wonka's my favorite movie, but I've counted Sweeney Todd as my favorite musical ever since I actually finally got to watch it. The story of how I became so fascinated with this movie is funny, at least to me, because the movie came out in like 2007, I think.
Yes, 2007.
Sounds right.
I had never heard of it, and I wasn't really into horror yet. The reason why I know this movie exists is because we sang, I don't know if it was 7th grade or 8th grade, but those are the 2 years that I was in chorus. We sang Nothing's Gonna Harm You for a Valentine's Day concert. And
funny.
My chorus teacher was obsessed with this movie, and so I knew that song before. I saw the movie, and since it was after 2007, we watched the clips of Helena Bonham Carter, and I don't know who played Toby in the movie, but them singing it. So I immediately was like, I need to watch this movie. But I didn't have anyone to watch it with because it happens to combine two things that both my parents love separately. Mom's my musical parent and dad's my horror parent. Neither one of them would watch it. So I didn't get to watch it until I was in high school, until like my sophomore year, because my boyfriend at the time also was obsessed with the movie. And I mentioned that I had never gotten to see it. So we watched it, and I've watched it a bajillion times ever since. And yes, I adore Johnny Depp. I love his singing. I love that he forgets that he can sing, that he forgets that he's in a band, that he's been in musicals, because he's also been in Into the Woods.
And Crybaby.
Yeah, that too. But we don't talk about that one. I don't like that one.
You don't like John Waters?
I don't like Crybaby.
He's the godfather of film.
But and Alan Rickman could surprisingly really sing well. Not to mention it's a Tim Burton film, so I'm obsessed with Tim Burton as well. And Helena Bonham Carter, I love her voice too. So yeah. This movie is,
so you out of 10, you give this movie what, a 3?
500.
500 out of 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, By the Seaside is now in the list. So
good song. I love that song. I love every song from it.
If you see the live production, I think we've got it in the list, the one with Angela Lansbury, which was the one that won the Tony. That has the arterial spray in it.
That blew my mind when I watched.
Check that out. Oh my God, she is like so much better than Helena Bonham Carter. Yeah, so much better than Helena Bonham Carter, but it's a different animal, and also there's 40 years difference.
Yeah.
But
I do love the stage production.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
love the intro song for the stage production. I wish that would have been in the movie.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, because that's where you get the Sweeney Todd, right. In the tale of Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street.
Yeah, I don't think they missed many songs. I think maybe like 3 or 4.
Yeah, they got most of them.
But yeah, there's definitely a few songs that weren't in the movie, which surprised me because I didn't know that when I first went to see it. Because the first time I saw it was at the college that I cannot think of what it's. I think it's Lindenwood.
Oh.
We went. My friend and I, who is also obsessed with Sweeney Todd, went and seen it at Lindenwood because they were hosting it, and we were like, "Oh, that's cool." So, I mean, we had never seen the stage performance, so we wanted to go see it, and oh my gosh, I love that's. I'm talking even though I'm not. I'm jumping ahead of myself.
No, you're fine, man.
The part that I was most excited about was seeing the kills with the chair. Because
dropping them down.
How do you do that on a stage?
It's a trapdoor.
Well, yeah, but I didn't think about that, and especially like a college performance, I didn't think they would have a trap door, really.
Yeah,
because I mean, anything I'd seen before was my high school.
Okay, so the floor looks like wood with padding. The whole damn floor is usually padded. Just painted.
I don't remember quite how they did it. I don't think they had a trapdoor for Lindenwood.
I have seen them where they dump them in a box. The trapdoor's under the box, or there's a ladder leading down into the box that you can't see the person.
I I really don't. I wish I remember how exactly they did it, but it was really cool, and I was fascinated by it. But I think the Muni definitely had the trap door.
They do.
So
Most stages do.
yeah, and both performances were amazing. I was absolutely in love with both of them. So
Yeah, the
couple
inner workings of that stuff is amazing. I love that stuff.
couple things here real quick. One is a complete non-tangent, but I can build a bridge there. Somebody mentioned Angela Lansbury, which made me think of Murder, She Wrote, which makes me think of, I didn't know if I'd mentioned this or if you'd seen it. Kathy Bates is playing Matlock on TV
Yes.
now. I want to see it.
Yeah.
I want to see it.
I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I just want to. I love Kathy Bates. But no, the thing that it was just tickling me as Megan was talking. I've I got into Two Geeks and a Microphone fairly early into their foray into podcasting. Maybe they might have been 20, 30 episodes in when I was introduced to them, and I went back to the very beginning and listened all the way through. And sitting here listening to Megan talk, it's so funny when I think back to the beginning when that show started, and Mike would say, "Well, Megan, go ahead, get on the microphone, talk," and you'd hear her in the background, no. She didn't want to talk. She didn't want to be on the air. She just wanted to help out. And it's funny because she just went off on here, and the more she talked, it just made me snicker, thinking all the way back to the beginning of
We're all like this. Go on, Megan. Keep
Listen.
going.
when it's something I'm passionate about,
It
I will
can't shut her
talk.
up.
I will talk your ear off.
It's okay.
That's
If
just
it's
funny.
something that I don't quite know or I'm nervous about, I will be quiet.
Dude, I will talk about Stephen Sondheim for an hour and I have talked about Stephen Sondheim for an hour and a half.
I can attest to that.
I beat him to death.
Didn't he do Into the Woods too?
Yes, he
Yes.
did.
Yes.
And a funny thing happened on the way to the forum and several other things.
Yep.
That are leaving my brain right now.
I think Sweeney Todd and Into the Woods are the only ones that I've ever seen.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, I've never seen a stage production of Into the Woods,
Into
but
the
I do
Woods?
love the movie too.
It's great. It's great.
Okay.
Which I mentioned also has Johnny Depp.
Yes.
The next musical in the list is The Music Man. It is a musical with book.
Oh, sorry.
What?
She's
I
excited.
was just gonna say, see, I told you it was an hint because that's one of my favorites.
If this is your list,
I know.
The Music Man is a musical with book, music, and lyrics by Meredith Willson, based on a story by Wilson and Franklin Lacey. The plot concerns con man Harold Hill, who poses as a boys' band organizer and leader and sells band instruments and uniforms to naive Midwestern townsfolk. Promised to train the members of the new band, Harold is no musician, however, and plans to skip town without giving any music lessons. Prim librarian and piano teacher Marian sees through him, but when Harold helps her younger brother overcome his lisp and social awkwardness, Marianne begins to fall in love with him. He risks being caught to win her heart. In 1957, the show became a hit on Broadway, winning 5 Tony Awards, including Best Musical and running for 1,375 performances. The cast album won the first Grammy Award for Best Musical Theater Album and spent 245 weeks on the Billboard charts. The show's success led to a Broadway and West End revivals, a popular 1962 film adaptation, and a 2003 television adaptation. The Music Man is frequently produced by both professional and amateur theater companies, and it is a popular choice for high school and college productions. I love Robert Preston.
Robert Preston is brilliant, and also who's brilliant in this, I love this actor, Buddy Hackett.
Yeah,
I love Buddy Hackett.
The older I get, the more I become Buddy Hackett. I started saying that in my 20s, and it's become true.
Well, and The Music Man has been such a fan favorite for so many years for so many people. The Simpsons have done a parody of the Music Man.
This show is so bad, though. The show is so bad.
No, it's great.
This show is bad. This is not a good musical.
Yes, it is.
One of these things where they just sing for no freaking reason.
It's The Music Man.
It's not. It's okay. 76 trombones. Okay, I get that. That makes sense. The rest of the thing, it's just like, oh my God, just stop, stop. It is as bad as the second act of The Fantastics. It is as bad as Oklahoma, which, in my opinion, is a crime against humanity.
I like
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
The Music Man is and always will be special to me. That musical has a special place in my heart. Not only is it so, I think probably there's a one later on my list that I'm pretty sure is the first musical that I was ever obsessed with, but my real my full delve into musicals would I attest to, again, my 7th and 8th grade year. I think it was 8th grade that we had we had a unit between band and chorus because I was in both. And both our band instructor and our choir instructor loved musicals. So they did a joint mini lesson plan where we just watched a bunch of musicals, and Music Man was one of them. Seven Brides for Seven Brothers was another one that I found and loved because of that. Fiddler on the Roof, a whole bunch of your classic ones. So, but also my freshman year, I was in Music Man. So Music Man holds a very special place in my heart, and I adore it. And anytime I've had somebody pay with a Wells Fargo card, I immediately get that song stuck in my head. I immediately start singing, "Oh, the Wells Fargo wagon is a coming down the street." I immediately start singing that. So, the Music Man has a very special place in my heart, and it will always be one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's the one bank I haven't worked at.
I get it. There's some things I like that aren't good either. So
I have to pause for 1 sec just to say I can hear Mike in the background yelling to the Cowboys game.
Oh yeah,
is that what that is?
I tried shutting the door.
Yes. Oh no, don't worry about it.
I thought he was going to fist fight me over the Music Man. I'm like, really?
No.
Although Music Man is on the list of dad approved ones because I was in it.
Okay, I'm not going to sit here and lie about it. I have the Cowboys game on below my monitor right now, and I'm looking from time to time. I'm sorry, diehard Cowboys fans. That's just how we are.
Getting into it.
That's okay.
The next musical on our list is The Sound of Music. It is a 1965 American musical drama, film produced and directed by Robert Wise, from a screenplay written by Ernest Lehman and starring Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer, with Richard Hayden, Peggy Wood, Charmaine Carr, and Eleanor Parker. The film is an adaptation of the 1959 stage musical composed by Richard Rodgers with lyrics by Oscar Hammerstein II. And a book by Lindsay and Cross. It is based on the 1949 memoir, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers by Maria von Trapp. It is set in Salzburg, Austria. It is a fictional retelling of her experience as a governess to 7 children, her eventual marriage with their father, Captain George von Trapp, and their escape during the Anschluss in 1938. Filming took place from March to September of 1964 in Los Angeles and Salzburg. I basically did more on the film. The musical does not get nearly as much play as the film itself does, because the film won the Grammy for the best album and an Oscar for the best music and things like that. I like The Sound of Music. Again, it's kind of like some of the other ones. This is when you tell someone musical, this is what they're talking about.
Oh, a lot of people are going to go straight to Sound of Music with that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this shows the true musical talent of Julie Andrews.
Oh yeah,
she's brilliant.
Right.
This movie is very
and
very
Christopher
good.
Plummer.
Yes, Christopher Plummer as well. This is a very very good one and deservedly goes in the list. It's not one of my favorites, but it would go. It would go in a top list of one of the best musicals of all time
Yeah.
because of the singing, the performances, everything about it is great. It's just not personally one of mine, although I do
Yeah.
have the appreciation for it and I like it.
Yeah, it's a musical.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're talking about a musical. I'd put it up there with like The King and I, stuff like that. It's like when you're talking about musicals, this is what usually people are talking about. It's
Well, and
not really on
again,
the edge. It's not really a crime against humanity like Oklahoma. It's in there. It's good.
and again, it's
I
not
really hate
music.
that show, by the way.
Again, it's
Oh.
not which one?
Oklahoma.
Oh.
And the second act of The Fantastics is terrible.
Again, this is not a musical that's music just for to have music in it. The music furthers along the story. Now,
Yeah, it's about a family of singers.
we have a musical coming up in this list that I love.
Uh-huh.
I think it's I think it's a very, very good musical. Don't say what it is. I know you hate this musical.
Yes, I do.
So you know what I'm talking about, but don't say it yet.
Yeah.
But
No, I'm not.
what I will say about that one, and when we get to it, is that one is a musical where the music does not further along the story.
No.
So anyway, continue.
Yeah,
This one
one
does.
song.
Okay, we'll get there.
One song.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't really say anything bad about Sound of Music. Again, when I use those alternate titles, Pound of Mucus, Camel Snot, stuff like that's jokes. Those are theater jokes. When we talk to each other, it's like, well, back then when I was one of them. What are you doing? Oh, Pound of Mucus. There's an alternate name for every single one. Joklahoma. Again, they're all puns. But yeah, it's a good piece. Julie Andrews is great.
It makes
I have
sense.
seen plenty of live productions of it. It's lovely, especially with all the children singing. And that's a difficult production to put on. Anytime you got to deal with kids and animals, it's hard.
The only live production of The Sound of Music I've seen is the one that NBC did live. That's the only live.
Yeah.
That's the only live production of it I've seen.
You know, that wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't.
Bad.
It
That
was
a
really
staging.
good. It was really good.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen a live performance of Sound of Music.
If you can see the NBC one, if you can find it, it was really good.
Yeah.
It was really
That's
good.
a decent production.
Yeah.
Also, for people out there, I know it's one more streaming service. There's a streaming service called Broadway HD. If you want to see this stuff,
Ooh.
yeah, it's like $5 a month. Broadway HD, and you can see all kinds of stuff. You can see musical, straight plays, everything. It's not just Broadway. And by the way, when I say Broadway is not just a group of theaters. It is a type of contract that plays in 10 specific theaters. But other contracts can play that aren't officially Broadway shows. But you can also play in like the Gershwin and not be a Broadway show. It's off Broadway because it's not the right kind of contract. It's how they set up the production more than anything else. It used to be just if you played in those theaters, it was a Broadway show, but it's not that way anymore. And it hasn't been for like 30 years. The next musical in the list is The Phantom of the Opera by Andrew Lloyd Webber, by Charles Hart, additional lyrics by Richard Stilgoe, and libretto by Lloyd Webber and Stilgoe, based on the novel of the same name by Gaston Leroux. It tells the tragic story of beautiful soprano Christine Day, who becomes the obsession of a mysterious but disfigured musical genius living in the subterranean labyrinth beneath the Paris Opera House. The musical opened in London's West End in 1986 and on Broadway in 1988. It's production directed by Harold Prince, starring English classical soprano Sarah Brightman, who was married to Andrew Lloyd Webber at the time, as Christine, screen and stage star Michael Crawford as the Phantom, and international stage performer Steve Barton as Raoul. It won the 1986 Olivier Awards and the 1988 Tony for Best Musical, with Crawford winning the Olivier and Tony for Best Actor in a Musical. A film adaptation directed by Joel Schumacher was released in 2004. The Phantom of the Opera was the longest running show in Broadway history and celebrated its 10,000th performance on 11th February 2012, becoming the first Broadway production in history to do so. It is the second longest running West End musical after Les Miserables, and the third longest running West End show overall after The Mousetrap. No one will ever beat The Mousetrap. The Mousetrap ran in the West End for 38 years.
Wow.
Yeah. The one little theater that was, they did The Mousetrap. Everybody loved it. They kept it up from like the 60s to the 90s. It was crazy. Having said all that, Phantom of the Opera is a musical with lyrics and a book by Ken Hill. It is based on the 1910 novel The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. Hill wrote the original lyrics to the music of Giuseppe Verdi, Charles Gond, Jacques Offenbach, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Carl Maria von Weber, Gaetano Donizetti, and Arriago Boita. It premiered in Lancaster, Lancashire, England in 1976 and had a West End production in 1991 and a further international productions. In 1984, Hill revived his musical version of Phantom of the Opera, this time, though he wanted to add the kind of music that would have been heard at the Opera Garnier in the late 19th century. Consequently, he discarded Armand's score and wrote original English lyrics that told Leroux's tale, set to opera arias by Verdi, Gond, and Offenbach. He tried to make a deal with Andrew Lloyd Webber, who at the time was married to Sarah Brightman, who Hill was trying to get. He was doing a revival of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Winchester Theater. Webber chose to pursue the musical without Hill and developed his own version. So, what I'm telling you is Andrew Lloyd Webber literally stole this show. There are a lot of people who do not like this dude because of that. Probably where the storyline of the nanny comes from, because he straight up ripped off Hill and didn't give him any credits for it. All he did was change the musical score.
I don't know. Mine is the movie because I love Gerard Butler.
Okay.
I love him.
The score he wrote directly rips off The Who and Pink Floyd. If you've ever heard the album Echoes, you have heard Phantom of the Opera. Pink Floyd.
I would like the music one.
Yeah. Pink Floyd sued him over it. But he changed it just enough where Ken Hill couldn't.
Well,
so, saying all that, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. My views on it purely are just for the movie version. And I adore Gerard Butler and his performance of the Phantom.
So, and I'm on your side of the tracks on this one. I enjoy it purely for what it is, regardless of who stole it, when, where, why, and how. The fact of the matter is, it's out there, it's released, it's very good. The music is very good.
It's not good. It's okay.
I think it's really good. Megan disagrees with you. I disagree with you. My daughter disagrees with you. Brenda disagrees. Hey, Zig's outnumbered.
Hey, 10 million people bought the Milli Vanilli record. Did that make it good?
And now look at the artist.
The song itself was popular and good at the time. The fact of the matter is they stole it and they got rewards taken away from them and everything. But
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Andrew Lloyd Webber needs to have these awards taken away from him.
Okay.
Because he stole the musical and the book for this show.
But this episode is not who are our favorite composers, songwriters, and musical producers, and why do we love them?
You're right.
This is about
I have a version of the Phantom of the Opera that's actually better than this in my list. It is good. Because there was another version despite the Ken Hill version.
Oh, right. You talked about that. You talked about that.
Yeah.
But this one here, everybody here but you enjoys. It enjoys, and that's okay. I
a big rerun.
I've listened to the music many times. Like I said, it was at one time one of my daughter's favorites. She enjoyed it. I listened to the music time and time again with her. Um, I I enjoyed it, and music from the Andrew Lloyd Webber version, regardless of where he got it or where it came from, is fairly iconic. It's fairly well known
Mhm.
because of how big it was, and it's one I've enjoyed. It's one I have enjoyed.
And I've never seen a stage production. I don't know.
Okay. The big deal about the stage production, it's mostly around the chandelier and the dropping of the chandelier. That's their
Right,
big
right.
gag.
I can understand. I could see that.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, and
The boat?
it's not a Wurlitzer, the organ.
Or yeah,
Well,
And most times they actually let the dude play the organ.
that's
the
cool.
the overarching message is Zig has been wrong before. He's been wrong in many punk musics that he's made me listen to. And I hate him for it. So there we are.
Yeah, it's I don't necessarily hate this musical, but I've actually seen I haven't seen the Ken Hill version because it got stomped. But Coppin and Yeston wanted to do something closer to what Ken Hill was doing originally, so they wrote their own version. Um, the music's better, the acting's better, the dialogue's better. It's just better. But it will never get a Broadway production. It's mostly touring shows, mostly repertoire stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just not an Andrew Lloyd Webber fan. Never have been.
Well,
Especially once I learned this stuff.
I'm not of any of his other works. I'm
Yeah.
not. It's
The
it's
only
just
one I
it's
really
this
know.
one. I like Phantom.
Oh my God, Cats.
That's a good one. That's a
Starlight
perfect one.
Express.
Oh God, horrible.
It's about trains and everybody's on roller skates. I'm not kidding.
I like the roller skates.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a roller skate musical, Zig.
No, there's nothing wrong with a roller skate musical.
Xanadu almost made my list.
Except for Xanadu. And
I still
Xanadu has its own charm.
We'll
I will
watch
give you-
it. We'll watch it.
Starlight Express. What's weird is there's this weird town in Germany where they have a Starlight Express theater where they show it like every day.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. They just really glommed onto it. But yeah, Starlight Express, it's about all these trains at a train yard. And, the oldest one it gets crapped on by everybody else and eventually wins the big event, a la Cats.
Never watched it.
Never.
No
I never had an
intention.
interest in cats
Right.
either.
Cats is awful. Cats
There's-
is
That's all I've
awful.
heard.
There's one decent song in Cats, and the only reason I like
Memory.
it is because
Memory.
is because it's
That's
beautiful, and Betty
that's
Buckley
popular.
sang it to me on my 18th birthday. Me and a dude named Scotty Vaca and nobody else. It was a crowd of two, and she sang it for my 18th birthday while I'm eating a chocolate bar, tears streaming down my face.
Memory is one of let me rephrase that. Memory is the only redeeming thing from Cats. Other
Yeah.
than that, the musical is stupid. The songs are stupid and annoying. My mother loves Cats, and she bought tickets for us to go see it at Fair Park, Dallas Fair Park, and I was in misery the whole time. Absolute misery. I would have rather have sawed off my arm than sat there and watch that
Cats
again.
is awful. Cats is terrible. I will
Pressing
give you this.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I will give you this. Sarah Brightman was incredible. I don't know, man. Michael Crawford, not so much. I think Gerard Butler actually did a better job on it because I did see it.
I love him. I
Because
love
just I
his
wanted to see what
vocals.
Gerard Butler actually was pretty damn good.
He has such an amazing voice.
Well, it's like one of those things, a good actor, you can give them the phone book and they can make it interesting. I think in this case, Gerard Butler actually elevated that POS. Overpriced POS. Because it's very expensive to produce.
You do know at one point in history, by the way, and I don't even remember who it was anymore, but there was a senator, I think it was, that did a filibuster by reading the phone book.
Yeah. I think it was Robert Byrd, wasn't it?
Maybe. I don't remember who it was. I just remember learning that in history class that they read the phone book to keep the filibuster going.
Wow.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Gerard Butler was incredible. And he's got a damn good singing voice because he's trying to keep up with, oh God, Michael Crawford, who was, the big dandy of all musical singers. And I remember everybody was nuts over this musical. And the first time I actually sat down and watched it, because there was someone had a recording of a production. And we sat down and watched a live recording of it. It was to an empty audience. Again, I got it from somebody who was in the know. So we're sitting down and we're watching it, and I'm like, okay, like a good musical, groovy. Everybody's gaga over this, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, wow, this thing sucks. Oh my God, that's Pink Floyd. That can't be right. Like, listen to my album. I'm like, oh my God, he ripped off the music. And years later, I found out about Ken Hill. But no, I mean, yes, this can be elevated. I think as much as this thing could be elevated, Gerard Butler did that. I think he went beyond the call of duty on that, and I applaud him for that. The next musical in our list is Grease. Grease is a musical.
It wasn't on Mom's.
Huh?
I figured you'd put it in there.
Oh, sorry. Did I get the wrong musical?
No.
I'm just saying,
it's ours are like interchangeable.
Oh, that's right.
yeah,
Okay.
all of
Okay.
ours are pretty much
I
interchangeable.
thought I screwed something up.
No. This was on her list.
Okay.
Zig's wrong.
Grease is a musical with music, lyrics, and book by Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey, named after the 1950s United States working class youth subculture known as greasers, and set in 1959 at the fictional Rydell High School in Northwest Chicago, based on Taft High School in Chicago, Illinois, and named after rock singer Bobby Rydell. The music follows 10 working class teenagers as they navigate the complexities of peer pressure, politics, personal core values, and love. The score borrows heavily from the sounds of early rock and roll and its original production in Chicago. Grease was a raunchy, raw, aggressive, vulgar show. Subsequent productions toned down the more risque content. The show mentions social issues such as teenage pregnancy, peer pressure, and gang violence. Its themes include love, friendship, teenage rebellion, sexual exploration during adolescence. Jacob describes the show's basic plot as a subversion of common tropes of the 1950s cinema. Since the female lead, who in many 1950s films transformed the alpha male into a more sensitive and sympathetic character, is instead drawn into the man's influence and transforms into his wild, roguish fantasy. Since it was first performed on February 5th, 1971 at Kingston Mines nightclub in Chicago, Grease has been successful on both stage and screen. The first Broadway production opened on June 7th, 1972. When it closed in 1980, Grease's 3,388 performance ran for the longest yet in Broadway history. Although it was surpassed by A Chorus Line on September 29th, 1983, it went on to become the West End hit, a successful feature film, 2 popular Broadway revivals in 94 and 2007, and a staple of regional theater, summer stock, community theater. It also remains the 17th longest running show in Broadway's history. Grease was adapted to in 1978 as a feature film which starred John Travolta, as well as Olivia Newton-John.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And a 2016 live TV musical used elements from both the original stage version and the film, and a 1982 film sequel, Grease 2, included only a few supporting characters from the film itself.
I think that live production of Grease was also on NBC.
Yes.
I think that was they had a series of that for a while. It was really good.
My big problem with this is I have seen a college production of Grease the way it's supposed to be, the Chicago version. That show is phenomenal.
Yeah, Zig hates this movie.
Yeah, that show's phenomenal.
This is the one I was talking about.
Yeah.
The music doesn't, with the exception of Summer Nights, the music
Beauty School
doesn't.
Dropout. I would give you Beauty School Dropout too.
Yeah, okay. I could see that.
Yeah.
But other than that, the music doesn't further the storyline. The music is just kind of intertwined into there. But I love Grease. I've loved Grease since I was a kid. I think it's great. I love Olivia Newton-John, of course, so I could be biased. But I think it's great. I've watched it many times over the years. I also like Grease too.
I like Grease too.
Grease 2, I love the soundtrack of that one. I think the soundtrack of that one is really good, and
I like
I
one
enjoyed it.
song in the second one,
Which one?
Reproduction.
Reproduction.
Yeah.
My favorite is Cool Rider
Cool Rider
from that
I'm a
one.
Cool
Yeah.
Rider.
Michelle
Grease 2
Pfeiffer.
is
Michelle Pfeiffer hates that movie.
yeah. The cool thing about Grease 2 is it's actually closer to the original production.
Oh, is
Because
it
what
really?
you see now is everybody does the clean version. They don't do the dirty Chicago version anymore. Which the dirty Chicago version is it's a dirty Chicago version. You know, that's the show that you want to see. And they do okay, some dirty words are used even in the songs.
Yeah.
They're using they're in the movie. There's dirty words in the songs too.
Well, I'm not just talking about pussy wagon. They actually say more than that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, still, like I said, I mean, whereas this is one of those musicals where it doesn't mostly progress the story. I still think this is a very good one. I've enjoyed it year after year after year. My mother introduced me to this one, and we saw it in the theaters. So, I agree with this one.
Grease is the one that I was talking about. That is my official introduction to musical. It was my first musical love. Thanks to my mother and my uncle, who also have been obsessed with this musical all my life and all their lives. Well, you know what I mean.
So when I was 12, I guess, my grandmother passed away, and we went up to New York for the funeral and such. And it was summertime, and I got to spend the summer up with my aunt and uncle for the whole summer. And that was the year that it came out on cable. And I hadn't got to see it yet. And I was so excited. And the first time it was showing, I was like, okay, well, my aunt was like, no, you need to go take a shower. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got like 20 minutes. I was like, okay, I can go in and take a shower. I went in, took a shower, the fastest shower I've ever done. I washed my hair, everything. And because I wasn't in there no more than like 12 minutes, she's like, no, you didn't bathe enough. Go in there. And I missed the first time. I was like, but back in the day, cable, it showed over and over and over.
Oh,
and
yeah.
over, different times.
So you only missed part of the Frankie Avalon song?
I don't know. I don't even remember, but I mean, I'm a lot older than 12 now. So, but I remember I was like, oh, I got to wait for the next showing because I wanted to see the whole thing. And I was like, so, but yeah, she made me go in and take another shower. And I was like, I'm not this dirty. But yeah, I have loved it ever since.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah,
Agreed.
their love for it, my mom and my uncles, because her brother also adores this movie, and I've watched it so many times with both of them.
He was always a Olivia Newton-John fan.
Yeah.
So
but he
his,
still
loves. Oh yeah.
And who's not an Olivia Newton-John fan? I mean, come on. Who's not? Shut up, Zig.
And this
Asshole.
movie also is like a very major point in a stuffed animal story for me. So I have.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please. I'm intrigued.
So, there was one year that my parents went out for Valentine's Day, and my dad always has made sure to include me on Valentine's Day, and I always get special treatment too from my dad. And most of the time it's I'll get some sort of stuffed animal and flowers and then candy. Well, they went out for Valentine's Day night, and I hadn't gotten anything, and I was staying with my grandma, and so I was devastated because I hadn't gotten anything yet. and I normally get something, and I was little, but dad he got my uncle to go and get a Build-A-Bear for me, and it's this little dog with all these hearts over it. And since my uncle got it, he dressed the dog up, and so she's in a little poodle skirt with the pink
that's cool.
skirt. So
A grease outfit.
her like a grease.
Like a pink lady.
Yes.
And that has always been one of my most special stuffed animals that I've had.
So when I can get a partner, Summer Nights has very often been a staple for me at karaoke.
It's a great song. But yeah,
not if you hear it 15 times a night, 4 nights a week.
Well, practice makes perfect.
No, I'm not talking about Geoffrey. Geoffrey's fine. It's everybody else who sings that song. Oh, let's sing Summer Nights. That song's harder than you think it is, dude.
Yes, it's not as easy as people think it is.
No, it is not.
It's got some range in there, and
well, I mean, that's the thing I don't like about the movie. John Travolta's not a singer.
No, not really.
And honestly, the Broadway version, before they made the movie, the guy who was playing Danny Zuko in Broadway was actually
Conway.
He was
He was
they cast him as Kaneki. It's like,
yes,
he's actually a much better singer than Travolta. But Travolta was the face.
Travolta was the name. I mean, he was riding the fame of Welcome Back, Kotter, and
Mr. Kotter.
Have we seen Grease at the Muni?
No, your uncle wanted to go, and we something happened. We weren't able to go.
Okay, so then I've only seen one stage performance of this, and this was
maybe we did, because I remember
I don't
going
know
with him once.
I don't remember. We might have, but I know the one that I know specifically that I've seen, and you've seen it too, because we were excited about it. Before I hit middle school, the middle school that I was going to go to, I was in elementary school. I want to probably say the last year of it, so like 4th grade. The 8th graders were putting on Grease for the middle school, and we went and saw it, and that was fun. I mean, I'm a kid knowing Grease, and they're putting on in middle school.
They almost did Grease one year that my daughter was when she was doing theater in high school. They almost did Grease, and if I remember right, that's the year they chose Little Shop of Horrors instead.
Yeah, because they had taste.
Shut up, Zig.
Wait, if you'll let me, there's 2 more musicals that I want to talk about.
Okay.
That should have been on my list.
We only got 5, Megan.
I know, but
do it real quick.
One of them is because I didn't think about it. So you guys were talking about how the last episode was the Christmas episode, and I kind of forgot about it, but I'm obsessed with the Netflix Scrooge. That's a musical based on.
Oh, I did a Scrooge, the musical. But you got.
Well, it's Scrooge. Yeah. Scrooged is
no Scrooge
Bill
the
Murray.
musical. I've done it.
Yeah.
I played Santa Claus, the Ghost of Christmas Future.
Nice.
In platform shoes, which is dangerous. I fell down.
Well,
this big shroud over me and these boots that made me.
Explains it. He fell down, bumped his head, and that's why he just.
That's why he's
I fell back. That's a great show, though.
That's why I think he's possibly a serial killer. So,
but I
and enjoy the beauty.
What's his face? Luke Evans. I think his name.
What?
Who plays him? Who plays Scrooge? And he played Gaston in the live action. I think it's Luke Evans.
Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, he played Gaston in that. But I love him as Scrooge. I love his performance for the Netflix one. So I had to mention that really quick because the last one was a Christmas episode, and that's a Christmas musical. And plus, Christmas Carol is one of my absolute favorite Christmas stories. But the other one that I really wanted to mention, I've never seen it, any version. I would love to, but I've listened to the music and I was obsessed with the Broadway actor. But Beetlejuice, the musical, I desperately want to see it. I want to see the Broadway version because I want to see Alex Brightman as Beetlejuice because I love Alex Brightman.
Broadway HD, I think has it.
That's what I was asking when you mentioned it.
I think they have it.
We should just sign up for it and not tell
It's only $5 a month.
We can get away with that.
I know.
Get rid of something else. Like he can hear us.
Yeah.
Actually, he probably can.
By the time he
He
listens
can't
to
hear
it,
me.
Right. We will already have had it for a couple of months.
Oh, hell, this show is great. I saw this live. Yeah, they got a Death of a Salesman on there that won the Tony that is incredible.
but I
Well, and I mean, you throw it out there. There's a musical on my list that is a favorite of mine because I love the music for it. I love every song from it. I think the people that sing all the music sing it brilliantly. But the movie itself is not good. It's good for a particular reason, and that's Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh yeah.
That movie's great.
I love
The
that
movie
movie.
is not. It's fun
That
when
movie
you're
is great.
no. It's fun when you're live and you get to interact with it and you have all kinds of fun.
I love both.
But yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah, when you go and
Rocky
sit down and
Horror-
watch the movie, it's like,
Yeah.
I need
Don't
an audience.
disrespect Tim Curry like that.
I need someone yelling
I
at the
love
screen
Tim
for
Curry.
this.
Love Tim Curry. But yeah, I
Love
mean
that.
that could have hit my list, but
Yeah.
I had to pick 5. So
Yeah.
But I had to mention Beetlejuice because I've never
Yeah,
seen it, so I can't technically put it as one of my favorites.
Yeah, no, that's
But I
fair.
want it to be.
That's fair. You should see it, and then the next time we do one of these, you're like Beetlejuice, and just talk about it for 20 minutes.
I would love to. Mostly it'll be me talking about Alex Brightman.
That's fine.
Fuck him.
The next musical in our list is mine. We've gotten to my list, Gypsy. It's a musical fable. It's a musical with music by Julie Stein, lyrics by Stephen Sondheim. Again, he keeps cropping up. And book by Arthur Lawrence. It's loosely based on the 1957 memoirs of striptease artist Gypsy Rose Lee and focuses on her mother, Rose, whose name has become synonymous with the ultimate show business mother. It follows the dreams and efforts of Rose to raise 2 daughters to perform on stage and casts an affectionate eye on the hardships of show business life. The character of Louise is based on Lee, and the character of June is based on Lee's sister, the actress June Havoc. That's who Christy Chenoweth was playing when I got. When I got embarrassed in front of 3,000 people. That was awful.
It's not like they all said, "Oh, hey, we know that guy."
Yeah, I shouldn't have been there. I was not supposed to be standing there when those lights came up.
Yep. Did you do a soft dance and go da, 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 and fall?
No. That was actually my first season. Later on, yeah, I did shit like that all the time. But yeah, I was like 15. God. Yeah, that was funny. Anyway, so the musical contains many songs that become popular standards, including Everything's Coming Up Roses, Rose's Turn, Small World, Together Wherever We Go, You Gotta Get a Gimmick, and Let Me Entertain You. It's frequently considered one of the crowning achievements of the mid-20th century conventional musical theater art form, often called the book musical. Gypsy has been referred to as the greatest American musical by numerous critics and writers, among them Ben Brantley. I don't know about all that. I do know that I have seen several productions of it. I've been in it, or not in it. I was working summer stock production of it. That was amazing. The woman we had that played Miss Mazeppa actually could play the trumpet and play it well. And she was before the heels 6'1". She was an Amazon in these heels. And she was lovely and red hair, and she had a very deep voice, and it was amazing to watch her. And I remember that till this day. I love the musical. I could tell you a couple of stories. A lot of people will not put a live lamb in it. It's not real. We made the mistake of putting the live lamb in. Best production we'd done. Up to that point, it's like after the lamb goes out, it's intermission. It's like, all right, this is awesome. This is going great. And the lamb decides to relieve itself in the middle of Gypsy's song.
Yep.
And I don't mean like a little bit.
No.
I mean like it turned a water hose on. Everybody's dying laughing. She's trying to sing her song and she's giggling and she leans down and goes, baby, you feel better. And then the lamb bleeds.
Answered. Aw.
It was the most precious thing I'd ever seen. But yeah, so don't work with live animals or children. But yeah, you know, I now love it. I've seen it, and I've seen other productions of it. Patti LuPone as Mama Rose. It was great. Our production, we actually brought Lainey Kazan in. Lainey Kazan could not. Is she alive? Is Lainey Kazan alive?
I don't know how to spell it. Name? How do you spell the name?
Because I'm about to drag her.
You got me. I have no idea. Oh, because we've
You know
never
what?
dragged anyone before.
Okay, she couldn't remember any of her lines. None of them. Again, summer stock. Go, 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 go. So we had to tape down this woman's lines all over the set. So she's walking around tables, looking at the table, singing, Miss the Goldstone. We got through it. The problem is the very last scene, it's just lights. Like we had a ghost light in the middle of the stage. What a ghost light is a pole with a light bulb and a cage around it. You plug it into the floor, and it produces a spot of light in the middle of the stage. But the pole is painted black, so you don't see it.
Watch
So it
watch
doesn't-
Only Murders in the Building. They talk about that.
Yeah, it's a ghost light. That's all that's on the stage. There's no place to put dialogue for her to read. 14 productions, she didn't get it right once.
Mhm.
Yes.
She only had like 7 lines.
Wow.
Not one fucking time. So I hate to drag the woman if she's no longer with us.
Still alive.
No, she's still alive. She's 84 years old.
Oh, thank God.
Well, if you're listening,
Well, at least at the time of this recording,
Yeah.
Right.
She was very funny.
we don't know about it in 2
Yeah,
months.
she was very, very funny. And she'd never really done, she's a movie actor, so she'd never done live theater, especially not summer stock. So, you know, because her dad was Ilya Kazan, he was a director, so she kind of nepoed into the movie business, but she was good. I mean, I'm not saying she was bad. She just could not remember her lines, and it was awful. It was like we had cue cards. I've never seen a professional that bad. I've never seen an amateur that bad.
So when Megan was in kindergarten, we had a church production, and Megan wanted to be in this play at church, and we got the script, and they were like, normally we don't let kindergartners try out for parts with lines. Megan was determined. We had that script memorized upside down and backwards, forwards. She knew every person. She knew all of the lines. I mean, everyone. They even put her against other people that were trying out for other parts, because Megan knew the line that they were supposed to say and the line she was supposed to say. So she got the part. So our associate pastor played a part in this. Well, he ad-libbed. He loved to ad-lib. Well, he probably still does, but I mean, and Megan was like 5 years old, and she looks at him, and he just starts, because she knew her cue. And he would, and she's just like in rehearsal, she looks at him, she says, learn your lines. You're messing me up. And he goes, I've never been told off by a 5-year-old before. But it's like, well,
He would say you and
Well,
then keep going.
apparently Megan was the professional there.
yes, it was so funny though.
Learn your lines.
Learn your lines. That's exactly.
Learn your lines.
I'm sorry, Pastor
You need to
John.
know your shit, homie.
Because he would say the cue and then he would just keep going, and it's like, okay, I can't come
Oh, you
in.
see, he was stepping on your cue? What a ham. Sorry.
No, he was just an ad libber. He loved ad lib. but she was just like,
But when you know lines by cues,
right.
Don't step on somebody. You want to ad lib before and before, after. Don't ad lib past someone else's cue. That's diva behavior, and we don't deal with that. And I think you were right, Megan.
I do love that story.
Yep.
The next music. Well, what does everybody think about Gypsy? Have you guys seen Gypsy?
I love Gypsy. I thought it was.
I have never seen it.
Your list, I don't know
Mm-mm.
any. Yours is the one that I don't know any of.
None of them.
That was Natalie Wood played her.
The only technicality is Phantom, but
Oh, Coppin and Yeston's Phantom. Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, no. Yours, I don't know any.
You don't know the song "One Night in Bangkok"
Mm-mm.
by Murray Head?
Nope.
No.
It released that as a single. It's from the musical Chess. That's what actually the next one we're going to talk about.
And it was a hit single, so.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. But she's only 27. She's only 27.
By the time this comes out, I'll be 28.
Yes, you will.
Yes.
No, I like Gypsy. I thought it was. I always liked it. I always thought it was a good movie.
Yeah.
Good show.
Yeah, I love it, and I'd like to go see another live version of it. Just because, everybody the big headdresses and stuff, and again, burlesque.
Yes.
They're covered head to toe.
Yes.
There's everybody is covered up. It just looks like the artist.
Yep.
It's
From your
magic.
summary, it seems interesting.
Yeah. Oh, Gypsy's great.
We can watch that.
Yeah, Gypsy's great.
Is it on the Broadway?
I don't probably.
Yes, it is.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
I'm sure
I
it
used
is.
to be a schlepper, now I miss Mazeppa with my revolution and dance. And then she goes with the and it's really great when you get somebody who actually plays the trumpet. And if it's a redheaded 6.5 foot Amazon in platform shoes and a headdress, it's even better. And she looked like she was wearing a green bikini, again covered head to toe, with sequins on it. That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. When I see the thing from the cartoon Death by Snoo Snoo, she looked like that.
No clue.
Oh God, he's a delivery boy in the 30th century. Or the 30th century. Futurama.
Futurama.
Yeah, when they go to the planet of the Amazons, and the Amazons are like, "Death by Snoo Snoo." She
Oh.
looked like that.
I got you.
I've never
I
seen.
don't know. I remember that episode, but
All right, let's go on to the next one. The next one is Chess. It is a musical with music by Benny Andersson and Bjorn Ulvaeus of the pop group ABBA, lyrics by Ulvaeus and Tim Rice, and the book by Tim Rice. The story involves a politically driven Cold War era chess tournament between two grandmasters, one American and the other Soviet, in their fight over a woman who manages one and falls in love with the other. Although the protagonists were not intended to represent any real individuals, the character of the American master named Freddie Trumper is a stage version, was loosely based on Bobby Fischer, while elements of the story may have been inspired by the chess career of Russian Grandmaster Viktor Korchnoi and Anatoly Karpov. Chess allegorically reflects the Cold War tensions present in the 1980s. The music has been referred to as a metaphor for the whole Cold War, with the insinuation being made that the Cold War is itself a manipulation game. Released and staged at the height of the strong anti-communist agenda that came to be known as the Reagan Doctrine, Chess addressed and satirized the hostility of international politics atmospheres of the 1980s. As with other productions such as Jesus Christ Superstar and Evita, a highly successful concept album was released prior to the first theatrical production in order to raise money. In the case of Chess, the concept album was released in the autumn of 1984, while the show opened in London's West End in 1986. Where it played for 3 years. A much altered U.S. version premiered on Broadway in 1988 with a book by Richard Nelson, but survived for only 2 months. Chess is frequently revised for new productions, many of which try to merge elements from the British and American versions. And it was revived for the West End. There's also a show called Checkers which is basically the music of the two, where they're just up there singing on stage. Chess, checkers. To me, Chess is basically the best musical that came out of the 80s. I will say this, I prefer the American version. I don't see a whole lot of difference in the songs themselves. There's more synthesizer in the English version. There's more rock guitar in the American version. Therefore, I like the American version better. Not that I don't like the synthesizers. It's just I like the rock guitar with them. There's synthesizers in both. It's about, dude, the KGB and the CIA sit around and hash out how they're going to work things out. And they even have a little song. It's great. It's amazing. It's Cold War tension. It opens with this girl, and she's trying to help her dad, who is a Hungarian partisan during the Hungarian uprising. And he gets captured, and she runs away to the West. She ends up becoming a chess coach for Freddie Trumper. He meets the Soviets. They meet in Reykjavik, I think, at first. Freddie Trumper throws a fit because he's a little bitch. You want to side with the Russian because he's actually the one who's being forced to do all this stuff and deal with this prima donna. Then they go to Bangkok, where they meet for the second round of this chess tournament, which is where they do. That's Freddie Trumper saying one out in Bangkok. The Russian falls in love with Florence Vassi, who is the Hungarian girl who's teaching the American, all grown up. And they try to run off together. He's going to defect. They're going to be together. The Russians convince him that they're going to kill his family if he does. So he has to stay. They can never be in love. And then he throws the chess match, and Freddie wins in the end.
I've never heard of this.
Chess.
Oh yeah, chess. I haven't seen the whole thing. I've seen bits and pieces of it. The music of it is outstanding. I love the music from chess.
It's one of my favorite musicals. And again, it was a huge deal back in the 80s. Probably less so now because the Cold War was kind of over. But yeah, when this came out late in the Cold War, this was hot. And it was hot till about 92, 93. And it was like, this doesn't make nearly as much sense. Maybe now is time for a revival, you know? But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's very, very modern feeling. Well, very, very late 20th century feeling. My next musical is a funny thing that happened on the way to the Forum. It's a musical with music and lyrics by Stephen Sondheim and a book by Bert Shetlove and Larry Gelbart. Yes, that Larry Gelbart.
There's Sondheim again.
Yeah, I told you, man, I love seeing Sondheim. Inspired by the farces of the ancient Roman playwright Plaudius, specifically Cursulio, Pseudolus, Miles Glorious, and Mustellaria. The music tells the body story of a slave named Posidolius and his attempt to win his freedom by helping his young master woo the girl next door. The plot displays many classical elements of farce, including puns, the slamming of doors, cases of mistaken identity, frequently involving characters disguising themselves as one another, and satirical comments on social class. The title derives from a line often used by vaudeville comedians to begin their story. A funny thing happened on the way to the theater. The musical original 1962 Broadway run won several Tony Awards, including Best Musical and Best Author. A funny thing has enjoyed several Broadway and West End revivals. It has made its successful film starring the original lead of the stage musical, Zero Mostel. I have seen some live action versions of this that are incredible. Zero Mostel's performance as Polybius is pretty awesome. But yeah, it's a Roman farce. It's funny. There's a lot of music. One of my favorite break of all time. I just have one thing to say. What's that? Looks at the audience and goes, intermission. That's how they end the first act.
That's great.
Cool.
Never seen it done before or since, but that's how you break for intermission in that.
That's
I love
like that.
Yeah, I love that show. It's a lot of fun. Geoffrey, you've seen Funny Thing Happen on the Way to Forum, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, the next one.
I'm familiar with it, but no,
Yeah.
I have not seen it.
I kind of started watching it in the movie, kind of.
Yeah.
It felt like almost like a Mel Brooks kind of feel.
The parody of the Roman Empire in History of the World Part 1 is a parody of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very vaudevillian.
Yeah.
Kelm, Yiddishkeit.
Right.
It's all that. Yeah. Yeah. So Mel Brooks relies heavily on that stuff.
Yes.
Mel Brooks is basically pulling out tropes from the early part of the 20th century that we've forgotten about, and that's why he's so funny.
Yeah.
Expertly. Same with Stephen Sondheim. The next one is Sugar Babies. It is a musical review conceived by Ralph Allen and Harry Rigby, with music from Jimmy McHugh, lyrics by Dorothy Fields and Al Dublin, and various others. The show is a tribute to the old burlesque era. What Sugar Babies is a burlesque show. In a 1977 scholarly 4-day conference, the study of a history of American popular entertainment at the New York Public Library of the Performing Arts, Ralph G. Allen, a theater professor and his historian fascinated with burlesque, presented a lecture from a prior college of fellows of the American theaters. It's like, why did burlesque go away? They couldn't really say. So they decided to write a burlesque show and make it a musical. And there's comedy, there's sketches, there's dancing, nudies. Again, they're not really nude. They're covered from head to toe, but they look like they might be, have like a fig leaf or something. They're not. It's burlesque. You're not allowed to actually show actual skin. And they went by those rules. And not necessarily dirty words, but it's lurid. It's less shocking than what's going on network television right now. It's way more tame than that. But back in the day, this was kind of wild and lurid and crazy, and that's what it harkens back to. It's a lot of innuendos and jokes, great songs, great dances. There some versions of it actually have like spinning plates acts and stuff. If you actually get to see some of that, because we don't really have that anymore. But yeah, it's a burlesque review, and I put it in here because it's amazing and incredible to see. And it's like, oh my God, no one's been doing this for 100 years. Well, in the late 70s, they decided to start doing it again, and now it's making its way around. It never ran on Broadway. Repertory groups will put it on every once in a while. It's like, oh, hey, we should do Sugar Babies because people need burlesque in their lives. Let me be your sugar babies. But they take all of the tropes. There's the top banana, the second banana, and the third banana. Those are all positions in how you present and do the show. They play other characters, but they also present the show from the top down. And there's always an order into how they act and what they do. So they put that in there. You didn't see it in all burlesque shows, but Sugar Babies is like, if we're going to show this, we need to show this. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Again, it's a little bawdy, but it's not that bad, especially compared to what we've got on television now. But it's early 20th century stuff, going back hundreds of years. Because people didn't have TV or movies. They went to live theater back in the day.
Right.
That's what this harkens back to. The next one I have is Phantom. Phantom is a musical with music and lyrics by Murray Yeston and book by author Arthur Coppett. It is based on Gaston Leroux's 1910 novel, Phantom of the Opera. The musical was first presented in Houston, Texas in 1991, although it has never appeared on Broadway and has been overshadowed by the success of the 1986 Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. Coppett and Yeston's Phantom has received over 1,000 productions. Yeston and Coppett had just finished the musical Nine, winner of the Tony Award for Best Musical in 1982, when in 1983 they were approached by actor-director Geoffrey Holder to write a musical based on Leroux's novel. Holder had obtained the rights to musicalize the novel in America from the Leroux estate, making Phantom the only Phantom of the Opera musical to do so. Holder planned to direct initially. Yeston was skeptical of the project. He said, I laughed and laughed. That's the worst idea in the world. Why would you want to write a musical based on a horror story? And then it occurred to me that the story could be somewhat changed. The Phantom would be a Quasimodo character and an Elephant Man. Don't all of us feel, despite outward imperfections, that deep inside we're good, and that is the character you cry for. In 1984, British producer Ken Hill revived his 1976 musical Phantom of the Opera in England. This was not a big threat to Holder, Coppet, and Yeston, since their musical was intended to play on Broadway. The real threat emerged when Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Phantom of the Opera became a smash hit in London in 86. The novel was already in the public domain in Britain, but would still be under copyright in the United States for 2 more years, where Holden held the rights to it. Yeston had completed much of the score of Phantom, and Yeston and Coppet and Holder were in the process of raising money for a Broadway production when Lloyd Webber revealed plans to take his musical to Broadway. Subsequently, Yeston's Broadway investors backed out. Yeston, Coppet, and Holder reluctantly shelved their plans for Phantom and went their separate ways for a time. When Coppet saw the Lloyd Webber version of The Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, he realized that the approach he and Yeston had taken was fundamentally different and that it could still work on the musical stage. A few years later, Coppet wrote the NBC miniseries Hands of a Stranger, which was successful enough for the NBC to approach Coppet again. Coppet rewrote the script, outlined it for his unproduced musical Phantom into a teleplay for a 4-hour, 2-part miniseries entitled The Phantom of the Opera, and sold it to NBC. With Yeston's blessing, it was filmed at the Opera Garnier, and the only music used was the opera music. It starred Charles Dance, Terry Polo, and Burt Lancaster, and was premiered on television in 1990. Coppet said it told Murray to hold on. Maybe someone would see the miniseries, think it would make a good musical, and we'd be ready. The Yeston Coppet musical was finally produced by Theater Under the Stars, Houston, in 1991 under the official title Phantom. The piece has since been received to over 1,000 productions around the world. Yeston refers to Phantom as the greatest hit never to be produced on Broadway. Yeston and Coppet's Phantom is more operetta-like in style than Andrew Lloyd Webber, seeking to reflect the 1890s period of its score. It seeks to project a French atmosphere to reflect its Parisian setting. The story offers a deeper exploration of the Phantom's past and his relationship with Gerard Carrier, the head of the opera house. The character Raoul does not feature at all in the story.
Okay, I like that better.
Yeah.
But that's because, again, going back to I'm obsessed with that movie because I love Gerard Butler.
If Gerard Butler did Coppet and Yeston's Phantom, he may have. Like I said, there's been 1,000 productions of them. You probably like it better.
I've always been more on the Phantom side than Raoul.
Oh, yeah. Coppet and Yeston's Phantom is from the Phantom's point of view. Because he's the sad character. He's Quasimodo. He's the guy that's forced to do all of this work and not get paid for it. He's a slave because he has a messed up face.
Right.
Also, usually in the production of Andrew Lloyd Webber, the Phantom it's half his face, but it's like half this way. In this one, it's like 3/4 of his face. You only see the corner of his mouth. Or it'll be the lower half of his face will be fine. Everything above that is just horrific.
Interesting.
Yeah. But they never did the half face, I think, because Andrew Lloyd Webber used that silhouette to sell t-shirts.
Technically half. It's less than half.
Yeah. It's Yeah. His face is more messed up in Coppet and Yeston's Phantom. What's funny is the year that I was able to do Phantom, because I didn't even know anything about it until I had done it. So it was the same year we had done Chess. So the guy that played the Russian and the guy that played the Phantom, same guy.
Nice.
And Florence Vassy and the love interest in Phantom, also played by oh my God, she's famous for singing. Can't remember her name. She was the voice of the Little Mermaid.
Oh, Jodie.
Yes, Jodie. Yeah.
I don't know her last name.
Yeah.
Foster?
She is an incredible singer. She really hit those notes, especially for Florence Vassy and for the ingenue.
Jodie Benson. That's right.
Yeah, Jodie Benson. She and Keith kind of had a little thing going on there for a while. But she was just incredible.
She has
She
no-
has to use her hands to hit notes. That's the only
Huh.
it's just how she gets up there. It kind of took me away from some of her performances, but I mean she's mostly a voice actress, so I mean, I get it. But she has to when she pushes those voices out. Those
That's
she
kind of
could
cool.
oh man, she could hit them all. I mean, you think she was good in The Little Mermaid? Homegirl could hit everything. Homegirl could sing Take On Me by Aha and hit all the notes with no music, just off the cuff.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. That
She
was
has an
her
amazing-
warm up.
She does have an amazing voice.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I love.
I hope it's still as good as it was when she was young. I imagine she probably got better because she took care of her stuff too.
She can still sing because I've seen her. I've seen videos of her recently still singing Little Mermaid.
Wait a minute. She may not have been the ingenue in Family. She was the ingenue in, she was Florence Fossey in Chess. She may not have been. I may be remembering that. It was 40 years ago. I'm sorry. 35 years ago. Yeah. Something like that. Anyway. But yeah, that is it for my list. Thank you for letting me nerd out on musical theater. I
Oh
hope to
yeah,
do
knew you
often.
would. I mean, I knew there were going to be ones that were out there that we hadn't seen. I mean, ours are pretty mainstream in the ones we've seen. Yours go a very different route, but you spent a lot of time in the theater as well,
Yeah.
seeing things from a very different angle than we ever do. Um, but no, great list for everybody. I mean, I appreciate everybody giving their list out for this. I love a good musical. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. All right, then with that, I will step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off 10 Minute Murder, Fox News, Medium, South Dakota Public Broadcasting Radio, and this is the murder of Chester Poage.
Chester Poage.
I want to forewarn everybody before I get into this. This is a truly horrific, brutal, gruesome murder. It's one of the more brutal ones I've covered. Some listeners may not be able to listen to all of it. You've been warned, so you've got the warning out there. This was a hard one for me to research. This came up on a site that I see a lot of these on. And the more I read through this, the more horrified I was at this one. This is awful. This is truly, truly awful. And I tell ones like this, number one, to give a name back to a victim, to give a little bit of celebration as we can to their life before that, before the event, and also at the same time to let people know what awful, terrible people are out there. So anyway, you have been warned on this. So here we go. So on Independence Day, 1980, Chester Allen Poage was born to David and Dottie Poage. They were both fans of classic westerns and named him after one of their favorite characters. The family was complete 2 years later with the birth of Samantha, Chester's little sister. They lived on a farm. The farm had been in the Poage family for generations, over 100 years. And they were priming it to pass on to the next generation. Chester and his younger sister grew up living and working with their parents on the farm, and the work was tough and physically demanding, which farm work is. But despite his small stature, Chester was very tough. When he was done with the hard work for the day, he would be found playing baseball and basketball with other children in rural Norton County. Again, Chester was small and short for his age, and children can be cruel. The other members of the basketball and baseball teams bullied him, and he was almost always picked last. In 1994, when he was 14, the family moved to Rapid City, 450 miles northwest in South Dakota. And this was in part because David had severe asthma, but it was also a fresh start in the hopes it would help paste over the cracks that had begun to form in his and Dottie's relationship. But unfortunately, 2 years later, in 96, Dottie filed for divorce, and sadly, 4 days later, David ended his own life. This unsurprisingly hit the children very hard, particularly Chester, who loved his dad. Dottie then moved them back to Norton, where they could be around their grandparents. But by now, Chester had gone through a series of growth spurts, and he was in college. He was now over 6 feet tall, and he became good with his hands and interested in technology, which is partially the reason why he chose to study communications technology at Northwest Kansas Technical School. With her son away at college, Dottie decided it was time for another fresh start, and the allure of the Black Hills drew her back to South Dakota, and she and Samantha moved there to the small city of Spearfish in December of '99. Chester had just finished an internship in Denver 2 years into his college career. He was now 19 and just a half year from graduating. And he decided to take a little break, spend some time with his family. And so he moved into the Spearfish home for a while, which meant the world to Dottie. And she and Chester bonded very, very much so over the next few months. In March of 2000, it had been a very harsh winter in South Dakota, and Spearfish in particular, which is very cold and unpredictable. And it was getting near the end of a long winter, and Dottie really wanted to exchange the snow for some sunshine for a bit. So she and Samantha booked a trip to Florida, and Chester stayed behind to look after the house. They got home a week later, and Dottie noticed Chester's Chevrolet Blazer wasn't in the driveway. To make matters worse, she opened the front door to find that their home had been ransacked and numerous items were missing, but Chester was also missing. There was no sign of him whatsoever. There was a missing persons report filed. Nothing came of it, and the days turned into weeks, 6 of them to be exact, during which Dottie had no idea what had happened to her son until she got a phone call from the police out of the blue. They'd found Chester's car abandoned more than 1,000 miles away in Texas. And with her son still missing, Dottie traveled south to collect his car. During the long drive back home, when she had reached southeast Kansas, she received the news that her son was dead. Chester's body had been discovered in Higgins Gulch, which is a remote forested region a few miles from the house. On April 22nd, a woman who owned land by the gulch had stumbled upon his remains floating face down in a shallow creek. He was naked but for his shoes and socks and a sleeveless undershirt. A forensics pathologist was able to identify the remains as that of being Chester, but his injuries were unlike anything he'd ever seen. There was barely a part of his body that was not marked by bruising or abrasions. His ears had been completely amputated. There were numerous stab wounds, including one that almost severed a jugular vein and one that had penetrated his skull and entered his brain. There was a large section of his scalp missing, and his skull bore a complex spiderweb fracture no less than 5 inches wide. So this kid was brutally, brutally killed. Chester's cause of death was determined to be a combination of stab wounds and blunt force trauma. His injuries were so catastrophic that they advised Dottie not to identify him herself. That's how bad it was.
It was so bad. There was like, yeah, you get somebody else to look at him.
Yep. It was clear that it was no hiking accident, and what they were dealing with was a homicide, which was something the Spearfish Police Department rarely handled, and they had no leads. That was until April 25th, when another unexpected phone call would help advance the case. A man named Danny Burkhart called the police and said his friend Daryl Hoadley had told him he was involved with the death of a man whose body had been discovered in Higgins Gulch. He also told them exactly where to find Daryl because he was laying some carpet at the Deadwood Gulch Hotel as they spoke. So police acted fast, and Burkhart was fitted with a wire before he went to the hotel to discuss things with Daryl, and police listened closely outside, and it wasn't long before he made several incriminating admissions about Chester's murder. After waiving his Miranda rights, Daryl Hoadley was arrested and brought into the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office. So 21-year-old Daryl Hoadley was a young man plagued with a troubled upbringing himself. His childhood had been shadowed by emotional, physical, and sexual abuse from his mother and the men that were in and out of her life. By the time of Chester's murder, he was already the father to an infant daughter. He had indeed been involved in the killing of Chester along with 2 of his friends, Elijah Page and Briley Piper. Elijah Page was 18 years old and originally from Titusville, Florida. His journey to spearfish had been marked with tragedy and abuse, and unfortunately, the side effects that were starting to show. Growing up, he had been moved from abandoned building to abandoned building by his mother and stepfather. And those derelict homes often had no heating or even plumbing, and every cent his mother and stepfather came by went into fueling their drug addictions. When money ran out, Elijah's mother found a cruel way to get what she wanted. When Elijah was only 2 years old, his mother began selling him to her dealers in exchange for drugs and money.
Oh my God.
Both she and these men allegedly physically and sexually abused him, but that was only the start. When an angry and irate dealer showed up at their front doorstep demanding to be paid, Elijah's stepfather used him as a human shield to try to fend the dealer off. Finally, Elijah was placed into foster care, which was how the 18-year-old ended up in Spearfish, but by then the damage had been done. In his teens, Elijah began showing signs of sociopathy. He had rage
Oh,
issues.
you think?
Oh, yeah, no kidding. He had rage issues that threatened to turn violent, and he showed no remorse or empathy for those around him. The leader of the gang of misfits was 19-year-old Alaskan-born Briley Wayne Piper. At just 9 years old, he set his parents' bedroom on fire, one of the McDonald Triad things. At 13, he'd been arrested for molesting a woman and then later arrested again for robbing a classmate at knife point. He was later described as someone apt at manipulating others, but it was actually Elijah who set the wheels into motion the day that would lead to a devastatingly bitter and cruel end for Chester. An arrest warrant was issued for Daryl's accomplices, but they were trickier to find as they had fled the state. 3 days later, though, Elijah Page was located in Texas, where Chester's car had been found, and soon after, Briley Piper was discovered in his home state of Alaska. They also confessed and were both arrested for first-degree murder, extradited to South Dakota, and jailed in Lawrence County.
Oh, one went north and one went south.
Yep.
One stayed in the middle.
All three men gave complete and shocking statements detailing the events of the murder. So here we go. If there's any time you're going to bail out, this is it.
Okay, let's do this.
They hadn't just killed Chester, they tortured him, subjecting to a sickening and prolonged ordeal. At 8 p.m. on March 12, 2000, all four men played video games at Chester's home. They'd been hanging out there for about a month with his mom and sister away in Florida. It was the perfect opportunity to invite them over. During the evening, Elijah began to wander around the house, checking out the property, including Dottie's bedroom. A short time later, he approached Briley, and they agreed that there was some good stuff and they should steal it. But obviously, they couldn't have a witness to the robbery, particularly when the witness lived at the house they were planning to rob. So sometime later, they convinced Chester that they should go together to the house where the three others had been staying. So they made their way there in his 97 Chevy Blazer. But as soon as he walked inside, Elijah pulled out a .22 caliber pistol, which was a pistol Chester recognized. And this is really where it kicks off. If you're squeamish or can't listen to horrific violence, stop. You've been warned. This is the last warning I'm going to give. This part disturbed even me. The gun was his mother's gun. Elijah had stolen it from her wardrobe. He was ordered to the floor. Briley kicked him in the face so hard he broke a tooth in half, and Chester was knocked unconscious. When he woke up, he sat upright in a chair bound tightly with speaker wire. Briley had placed a four-way tire iron across his feet and was standing on it, crushing them under the weight so he couldn't escape. They began to beat him, and then Elijah forced a bottle of tepid, stale beer between his teeth and tipped it down his throat, but it wasn't just beer inside. He'd mixed it with various crushed-up pills and topped it with hydrochloric acid to form what they hoped would be a deadly cocktail. Chester cried out in agony as the acid burned his throat and stomach, and he asked again why his friends were doing this to him, but in response, Elijah punched him in the face and ordered him to shut up. Chester pleaded with them to spare his life, and he offered them everything he owned, plus his silence, but they ignored him and began to sharpen a dull pocket knife while he watched in horror, but the idea was abandoned because they thought it would be too messy. So eventually they settled on the idea of killing him in the wilderness where he was unlikely to be found. In front of their friend-turned-victim, they began discussing potential ways to kill him, ignoring Chester's pleas and the damage they had already inflicted on him. These cruel motherfuckers. I'm so sorry. they're talking to Chester befriended them and was willing to give them anything. He was just a giving person. And they're sitting there talking about different ways they could possibly kill him as he is having his insides agonizingly being eaten out from acid.
On top of the beatings.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
At this point, Elijah took Chester's ATM card and asked for his PIN, and of course, Chester complied. He was then thrown into the back seat of his car and reminded that if he tried to escape, they would kill him. Briley jumped into the driver's seat and headed for Higgins Gulch, which again was a remote wooded Black Hills area 20 minutes southwest of Spearfish. When they arrived, the three men dragged Chester out of the car and into 12-inch deep snow. They stole his wallet, forced him to strip nude, but for the footwear and vest he was later found in. The air temperature that night was 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind chill was significantly lower. They turned up the car stereo so that they could party as they murdered Chester. Chester was beaten to the ground before the three men held him down and began to bury his exposed body beneath the foot-deep snow. He was then frog marched down a slope towards an icy creek just 50 feet from the car. Once there, Briley and Elijah began to kick Chester over and over again, everywhere on his near-naked body. They wore heavy combat boots and used Chester's head like a football. Then they forced Chester down into the frigid water where they beat him again, thinking that the blows or hypothermia would eventually kill him. When that seemed to be taking too long, they then pulled Chester out of the water and started kicking him again. They said they performed full run-up kicks so hard and numerous that this is what eventually amputated both of Chester's ears and scalped a postcard-sized patch in the skin of his skull. But Chester still clung to life. They kicked this poor kid so hard his ears came off.
Kicked his ears off.
They laughed at him as he cried and begging them to stop. They chuckled and cracked sick jokes about how much pain he must be going through, and Chester's cries did nothing but to fuel their laughter. At one point, he did try to escape. He quickly got to his feet. And think about this. Everything he's gone through so far, he was able to get to his feet and try to run.
He's a farm boy, man. Them farm boys are tough, but good God. Especially in 25-degree weather. He's naked except for his shoes and his vest.
Well,
he's fighting hypothermia as well as being beat to death.
The actual temperature was 25. The feels like was much lower with the wind chill.
Right.
So he got to his feet. He ran into the forest, but he had lost his glasses during the attacks, and he didn't get very far before Elijah tackled him, dragged him back to the creek, and beat him some more, quote, for bad behavior. They made him lie in the frigid creek water for extended periods and hoping the hypothermia would kill him, but it didn't. Chester had remarkable resilience, but the cold was too much to bear, and eventually he begged to allow them into his vehicle. He said he preferred to bleed to death in the warmth rather than freeze to death in the cold. Briley supposedly said that he was going to grant his last wish, provided that he first rinsed the blood from his body because he was dirty. Chester, trying to hang on to anything, sobbed as he painfully washed himself in the near-freezing creek water. He began crawling his way back uphill towards the car, but it was all a game to him. They weren't ever going to let him warm up. Instead, they laughed at him, taunted him, and dragged him back to the creek, and once there, they tried to drown him again. Briley stood directly on Chester's neck while the others tried to hold him underneath the water, but the rocks were slippery and they kept getting wet, so they abandoned the idea. Instead, Briley grabbed a nearby branch and attempted to bludgeon Chester to death with it. This didn't do it. By this point, he had stopped begging for his life and started to plead for them to kill him. He said, please just kill me. I can't take this anymore. So Briley then asked Darrell for his pocket knife. Elijah took a hold of it and was the first to stab Chester. He put it straight into his neck as far as it would go, which is what almost severed the jugular vein. He passed the knife to Briley, who punched the blade through Chester's skull and into his brain, but Chester still didn't die. Darrell took the knife back and struck it straight into Chester's ear socket, which Chester screamed in pain, which prompted further beating as punishment and more laughter from the trio. And according to Briley's statement, he went back to the car at that point. Meanwhile, Elijah and Daryl began dropping bowling ball-sized rocks onto Chester's head, and this is what finally ended his life after 4 hours of torture.
4 hours.
4 hours. Ceaseless, violent torture at that creek. It's horrifying, horrifying. The trio then jumped in their new car, turned up the music, and drove away, leaving Chester covered in rocks and half submerged in the icy water, which is where he remained until he was discovered 6 weeks later. The three killers then went back to Chester's house to complete the plan. They stole as many items of value as they could fit in the car, a stereo system, coin collection, Chester's PlayStation, and other items, and then went on a road trip, pawning the goods along the way. They first went for Briley's sister's house in Missouri in the hope that she'd let them stay for a while, but she refused, and so they made their way back to Spearfish. On the way, they used Chester's ATM card 6 times to withdraw cash in Nebraska and South Dakota. And Daryl's juvenile girlfriend later testified that when they returned to Spearfish, she saw them unpack the PlayStation and video games that Briley had bragged to her about what they had done. Briley apparently relished talking about it to anybody who was listening. He was proud of what he did. Killing someone had long been his dream. The three then decided it was best to split up, which is where they were, eventually found if they had split up. The Lawrence County Sheriff said that his death was the most violent, torturous death he'd seen in all of his 35 years of law enforcement. Elijah Page said nothing when he was asked what could justify what they did to Chester, though, and he said, I don't know, he never did anything wrong to us. All three men were charged with the same list of crimes: first-degree murder, aggravated first-degree kidnapping, first-degree robbery, first-degree burglary, and grand theft. When questioned about the case, each tried to downplay his involvement. Briley and Elijah blamed one another, and Daryl Hoadley blamed the other two. Briley and Elijah pleaded guilty and waived their right to have a jury determine their sentence. First up was Briley. His defense tried to downplay his involvement in the crime. They were especially keen to point out that he wasn't there when the final rocks were thrown, but all the evidence pointed to him being the ringleader. He certainly inflicted more than his share of the suffering on Chester, but the judge saw through his guilty plea, and waiving a jury trial is nothing more than trying to look like he was taking responsibility for his crimes, and he certainly didn't fall for the feigned courtroom remorse. After all, he'd been bragging about the crime to his cellmate. So on January 19th, 2001, Briley Piper was sentenced to death. He appealed because he had been saying he had not been given adequate advice when he made his initial plea. And in 2009, the Supreme Court overturned his death sentence and determined that a jury should decide his fate after all.
He waived his Miranda rights. They tell you point blank, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Yep.
That counts talking to the cops.
Yep.
That counts talking to your cellie. The only person that does not count against is your lawyer.
Correct. Well, the jury did decide in August of 2011. They reached their verdict, and it was unanimous, a death sentence again. The sentence was upheld by the Supreme Court in 2019, but even to this day, his appeals continue. He sits on death row awaiting execution. Elijah was also sentenced to death by the same judge on February 16, 2001. He appealed the following month, but was unsuccessful. Unlike Briley, he then began to accept his fate. In 2006, he asked a judge to let him die before he fired his attorney and halted all appeals, and this effectively fast-tracked him. Page was executed at South Dakota State Penitentiary, the first in 60 years, and he is among a handful of people his age or younger put to death since capital punishment was reinstated in the U.S. since 1979. His case is also unusual because a judge and not a jury imposed the death sentence, and he asked to die. His execution was by lethal injection, and by all counts, it was quiet and short, and Elijah displayed no emotion, and he declined to make a last statement. The last person executed in South Dakota before him was April 8, 1947. This was George Sitz, who was executed in Sioux Falls for the January 24, 1946 slayings of state criminal agent Thomas Matthews and Butte County Sheriff David Malcolm near Spearfish. Riley Piper is now the only person sitting on death row in South Dakota, and again, his appeals continue to this day. Unlike the others, Daryl Hoadley pleaded not guilty, and a jury instead tried his case. His defense argued that he was forced to go along with the nefarious plan because the other two had threatened his life if he didn't. The jury ended up voting 8-4 in favor of life in prison, and he was spared execution. Daryl Hoadley was somewhat of a follower. He was only told what to do after the murder was planned. Not only that, unlike the others, he seemed to demonstrate genuine remorse throughout his trial. But his sentence did come into question in 2021, and he was eventually sentenced to life in prison without parole. The last words of Chester Alan Poage were ignored as he begged his killers at least to let him die in the warmth. The torture inflicted upon Chester was beyond comprehension. The 4 men who carried out this sentence, they received justice, but the ones who were executed received relatively quick deaths, not necessarily painless deaths, but very quick, unlike what they did to Chester. I don't like advocating an eye for an eye, but this was so horrific what they did. It just pains me that they got quick deaths.
We can't make eye for an eye in our justice system because it's about laws, not about people.
I know we can't.
But what might benefit us as a society more is, hey, we got them in jail. We need to get some scientists in there to study them. And hey, it's like, well, hey, they don't have to submit to it. Bullshit. Yeah, they do. They're in jail. We're gonna go study them. So we can quit making people like this.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And there was obvious things in at least a couple of those young men's lives that led them to this path. That led this to
could have
this
seen
path.
it coming.
And that's where I agree with you. They've got to study these people more. We've got to be able to recognize there are things in these people's lives that if they go untreated, there's a high potential they're going to turn around and do something horrific like this.
If
there's
presented
a high
with
potential.
the opportunity, and they were presented with the opportunity for this, they're going to do something like this.
Yeah.
And as much as we've been studying this for the last, 3.5 years now, oh my God, I'm kind of, the way I look at people when I'm talking to them, so where'd you come from? Where you grow up? They start telling me things. It's like, I'm not going to be alone in the car with you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not unless I know I'm real good.
Right.
And I used to be a fairly trusting individual.
Well, as I forewarned at the beginning, that was a particularly horrific one. Like I said, that was a hard one for me to read through. I read through a lot of
poor damn kid for no reason.
Yeah, I read I read through a lot of court documents and news articles on this, and was just horrified every single word I read on this one. I was just like, wow. And like I said, I don't tell these stories because I think they're fun, enlightening stories. I tell them because I believe the victims deserve names, and their names deserve to be out there because, they were people whose lives were cut short from terrible human beings.
So how long did they know him before
Chester?
Yeah.
They had gotten to know him fairly recently when he came home from school, when he took a break from school. That's when he got to know them.
He hadn't been there that long.
No, and he had been playing video games and having those guys over from time to time. He hadn't known them very long. They were all older than he was.
Yeah.
Well, most of them were.
Yeah, they were just hanging out with some guys his age.
Yeah.
That's how I met Geoffrey.
Yeah. Well, sort of. But anyway, so hopefully people listen to this just to hear Chester and just hear the story and everything. I know there's probably some people that dumped out because I know there's people out there, because I've heard from them, that have said they didn't heed my warning before, in which they had. So that one, maybe some people have dumped out, so we'll see. I don't know. But anyway, so that's the story of the murder of Chester Poage. I appreciate y'all sticking through me with that one.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, again, thank you to Brenda and Megan for joining us. Really appreciate the 2 episodes they've been with us. As I said, I love musicals. It was really cool that we just kind of brought this up over Messenger and decided to do a little 2-part show around it. We knew these were going to be a couple long episodes, but hopefully everybody enjoyed it, and hopefully everybody enjoyed our guests. A lot of fun having y'all on. Would have y'all on absolutely anytime.
Thanks for nerding out with us.
Somebody yell at Mike that y'all were better guests. Just yell
Mike,
at him.
they were better guests.
No, I love having Mike on the show. So thanks y'all very much. We appreciate it very much. That will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub for everything you can find about our show. You'll find links to what we talked about in this episode of the stories, pictures of the items we talked about, plus you'll find the link to our YouTube page where you'll find our playlists, among other things that Zig so often updates.
Yes, please get out there and check out those playlists. I always think you guys should check them out before. That way you know what we're talking about. But, when it's.
I appreciate all the work you do on that. You do great work keeping those videos going every week. That's awesome. On our website, you can also find the link to our merchandise page where if you wish to show off your Nerdery Murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from there. That, along with our patrons, where you can find the link to our Patreon account. Our merchandise and our Patreon does go to the costs that are associated with the show. It costs to keep us on the air, keep us uploading, keep going with this each and every week. It's not easy, and it does cost. So please do consider donating to those causes. I promise you, we are not driving around in Lamborghinis and having phenomenal mansions out there. I think Brenda can attest to that. Exactly. Last but not least, something completely free you can do. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the topics we discuss. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Bye.
Cue the music.
Curious mind, Zig and Geoffrey dive in deep. Nerdery and murdery, no sleep. From superheroes to crime, they take us through space and time. Geeky tales and mysteries enter worlds no one else sees. Nerdery and murdery, here we go. We're Zig and Geoffrey, this we know. Stories wild, facts unfold, adventures big and tales of old. Comic books and killers too, techie stuff old and new. Travel through their wonderland, nerdery and murdery hand in hand. Every episode a ride, with our hosts as our guide. Laugh and shiver, feel the thrill. Come and join us if you will. Nerdery and murdery, here we go. With Zig and Geoffrey, this we know. Stories wild, facts unfold, adventures big and tales of old. Comic books and killers too, techie stuff old and new. Travel through their wonderland, nerdery and murdery hand in hand. Every episode a ride, with our hosts as our guide. Laugh and shiver, feel the thrill. Come and join us if you will. Nerdery and murdery, here we go. With Zig and Geoffrey, this we know. Stories wild, adventures